Next up, we have Dave Fryer from Domo. So I've heard really great things about Dave because he actually recently, I think, spoke at the Digital Summit here in Philly and had some people see him talk. And we'd already scheduled him here, so he's back in Philadelphia and really excited to see this. We asked Dave to show up because we recently became a Domo partner. We find that just for options for providing for enterprise level clients, it's good for us to have that expertise, and it's really great to have them as a partner that they can provide Dave to come here and talk to us. So without any further ado, Dave Fryer.
Thanks. All right, for those of you, can you hear me? I'm on? Yeah? For those of you who saw me at Digital Summit, you might get a little recycled material here, but that's okay. I'm behind the counter here because we're going to be making a carbonara today. No, we're filming or we're streaming it, so we have to be behind the test kitchen here. So how many of you have heard of Domo before? Okay, about half of you. So our marketing's slowly but surely working. We've been around for about 6 or 7 years. We're based in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have been growing like crazy. I've been with them for about 2.5 years, and it's been a really fun journey. Oftentimes, I'll just tell you what we do really quick. Oftentimes, we're looped into the BI space. We make a business optimization platform, which is marketing speak for, we do complete end-to-end BI solutions for companies. So everything from connecting to the data, we have over 500 pre-built connections into the most common systems that help organizations run. We have a built-in ETL tool within the platform. We do the visualization. And then where we kind of set ourselves apart from the competition is what comes after the visualization, because that's really what matters, right? It is turning these visualizations into action. So we have some features in our platform that help the business users digest that data and turn it into some kind of action for the business. So I've been with Domo for 2.5 years. Like I said, I'm a product evangelist for them, which is a really cool title. And it's just a fake title though. It's a Silicon Valley startup title. Essentially what I do is I go around and I speak to all of our customers, figure out what's working for them, what's not working for them, what they're doing in their industry or role that I can learn about and share with our other customers. And then I spend the rest of my time coming to like this and speaking to you people and letting you know what I learned from our customers. And so as I was preparing for this, I didn't want to talk about the actual visualizations because in my opinion, that's kind of the what. The visualization is the what. And what's really important is everything that happens before that is the why and the how. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today is the why and the how, everything that you need to do up until the visualization piece. When I was preparing for this, I came across a report called the State of the Future Report. And this is put out by a company called an organization called the Millennium Project. And they put out this report every year, and it outlines the top 15 biggest challenges facing the world. So as I was going through it, it was things that you'd expect, like sanitation, overpopulation, Kim Jong-un. That's a joke, by the way. But then number 5 jumped out at me, and I thought it was kind of weird, maybe a little out of place, and it was decision making. So top 5 global problems is decision making. Our ability to digest information and make effective decisions. I thought it was kind of odd, but it's exactly what we're here to talk about today. It's our visualizations, at the end of the day, effective visualizations lead to action, lead to decisions, right? And your visualizations, they're nothing but lubricant to make those decisions happen, right? They should be transparent. They should not detract from the message. They let the data speak for itself if it is an effective visualization. And so with this in mind, what we're going to talk about today is what makes an effective question. But before I do that, I'm going to be talking about metrics categorically. I'm not going to be talking about metrics or questions. I'm going to use the term metrics and questions, visualizations interchangeably here. They all mean the same thing. So how you look at effective metrics, I'm not going to be talking about the 5 metrics that you need to be looking at in 2017 or the top 3 metrics that every digital marketer would be looking at right now. But like I said, I will be talking about metrics categorically here in a second, just to give you guys a sandbox that you can play in when you're asking your questions. So every visualization that you make, maybe. All right, so every visualization that you make in your organization is going to fall within one of these 3 categories. We have foundational metrics, we've got indicator metrics, and we've got return metrics. Now, foundational metrics, they're the vast majority of any metric, any question, any visualization that you're going to make. And it's surprising to me how often I go to companies and they're using foundational metrics to make high-level strategic decisions in their organizations. And when I say foundational metrics, I'm talking about clicks, page views. I'm talking about going into a financial system and seeing cash balance or seeing sales, right? These numbers don't really do anything for you. You can't eat clicks. You can't eat leads, right? But it's surprising to me how often I go and speak to marketers and I ask them, what's your number? What are you responsible for? And they say, number of leads, right? When they tell me this, that tells me that they're ripe for a product like Domo because they have a very elementary understanding of what moves the needle in their company, right? If you're in marketing and your number is number of leads, that tells me that you don't understand the value of your leads. You don't understand the value that you're adding to your company, right? So these foundational numbers, vast majority of numbers, pretty simple to get to. All it takes is just logging into one of the many different systems that you have in your company and extracting that data and throwing it in Excel, and you've got foundational numbers. If we go one level deeper, then we get into the indicator metrics. And these indicator metrics or questions, what they do is they're tracking some type of behavior that you're either wanting your customer to go through or your company to go through. So an example of an indicator metric would be conversion rate, right? Churn, accounts receivable could be an indicator metric. If people aren't paying you, that's an indication that they're not happy with the service or the product that you're providing, right? Another indicator metric could be some type of milestone that you have in your sales process, okay? These are typically a little bit harder to get to because what's included in order to get to these is combining a couple of different indicator or foundational metrics, okay? And then finally, we have the holy grail of any metric, and these are the return metrics. And almost always they have a dollars and cents component to them. They're showing the value that you're adding, right? When I spend $1 here, am I returning to the company $1.20 or 75 cents, right? If I spend $10,000 modernizing our customer service portal, what kind of value am I creating? Either in recurring revenue, reduced churn. What am I doing for my company and my customers? And these are the type of metrics, these are the type of questions that if you're asking these questions and you can get to these answers, these are the type of things that are going to get you promoted. These are the type of things that are going to make you look really good if you can operate within the return metrics, okay? Here's another way of looking at them. That should say value. So value and complexity. As we increase in value, the complexity increases as well. And I don't mean complexity in the type of question. The return questions are still very simple. What is the value of X, right? What happens when I do this? They're very simple questions, but in order to get to those answers, you're going to have to start bringing in data from a lot of different sources, and it's just tough to get to these. Like I said, it's these type of questions that add value to your company, that'll get you noticed and get you promoted. Okay, so what makes a good question, right? This is the meat and potatoes of my talk here today, my presentation, is what makes a good question. So, like I said, the Evangelist team at Domo, we go around and we talk to a lot of our customers. We talk to a lot of people about what works for them, what doesn't work, and where they're seeing value and where they're innovating in their organization in regards to data. And we've decided that an effective question has three different parts. There's three different pillars of an effective question, right? There's an ownership element to it. It provides clarity. And then finally, effective questions are actionable. So what I mean by this, I was speaking to a CMO, and I was speaking to CMO, and she handed me all the dashboards and all the reports that she was consuming. And on every report, at the top of it, it had a name and a phone number. And I asked her, I was like, what's this? And she said, that's the Chocobo Throat. I was like, all right, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, if I'm looking at a digital marketing number, right, this is the person who can influence that number. This is the person who influences that number on a day-to-day basis. This is the person who I can talk to, and they can give me context, whether this trending up is a good thing or a bad thing, right? This is the person who its job is to make this number look good, right? 9 times out of 10, the person asking the question is the owner of that question. And if they're not the owner, then you should be asking yourself, should I actually be asking this question or not, right? Because if I can't influence it, then it's out of my sphere of influence, out of my scope of expertise. This isn't a question for me. This isn't a metric for me. I shouldn't be worrying about this, okay? Clarity is the next element of an effective question. And this is a cool one. I was speaking to a customer of ours. They're in the manufacturing space. They make automotive parts, and they're big into lean manufacturing. And I asked the guy, I said, he runs Domo for that company. And I asked him, I said, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, will you build me this report or this metric or this card out in Domo, how do you decide whether you should do that or not? And he said, it's simple, right? I treat our reporting environment the same way we treat our manufacturing facility, right? I just eliminate all the waste. So when they come to me and ask me for something, I push back on them. And I ask them why 5 times. He doesn't actually ask them why 5 times, but he pushes back on him and says, well, why do you need this? What does it do for us? How is this going to help us fulfill the mission of the company? How is this going to help you be better at your job, right? Is this going to increase revenue? Is this going to decrease costs? Is this going to kind of unmuddy some water in a process that you're trying to understand, have a deeper understanding of? What is this going to do for us? And then if they can come back to me and if they have a defensible reason and say, yeah, this is I need this because I want to understand where we're, I don't know, spending the most money broken down by industry. It's going to help me be better at my marketing allocation or sales focus. They can come back to me and they have a defensible answer, then I'll build it for them all day long because I know that they're going to use that, right? The question, the metric, the visualization has to provide clarity to that person consuming it. And then this is another nod to lean manufacturing. Actually, another company I was speaking to, I posed the same question to him. how do you decide whether you should build a visualization or not? And he said, yeah, for me, it's really easy. A number can either be good or bad, right? A number can be red or green. And I asked that person coming and asking me for a question, or for a visualization, I asked them, if this number is red, what are you going to do? And if they don't have an action plan, then I know it's a bad question, right? If they don't have an action plan, then I know that this is a visualization that's not going to be effective. It's not going to be used. It's not going to be utilized because they can't do anything with it. And again, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do with visualization, right? Is we're trying to help people be better at their jobs. We're trying to help people solve problems, trying to increase revenue and decrease costs for companies, right? So they need to be actionable. With this in mind, I want to talk about something that I learned early on in my career, and I think it's a problem that a lot of people have in this space. And it's 80% of BI projects fail, in my opinion. What do we got here? I think we're going down. So, all right. Well, when they work on that, I'll just tell the story. Okay, it was gratuitous timing there. So 80% of BI projects fail, and in my opinion, it's because of what I'm about to talk about. When I was prior to coming to Domo, I worked in M&A in the oil and gas industry. And I was brought into a company because they had a data initiative, right? They wanted to make better decisions based on data. And I went in there and I said, great, where's your data, right? And so they showed me all the different systems that they had, and I thought about it for a minute. And I said, okay, what I can do for you is I can take all the data that you're using from all these different systems, and I can funnel it into a database, data warehouse. And then on top of that, I can build a dashboard. I can build a model and tell you guys what you're doing right now. We can do a little bit of forecasting if you're interested in that. And maybe show some historical performance comparison. And they said, that'd be awesome. Yeah, you should build that, right? So I spent 6 to 9 months building this project, and I delivered it. And I said, you guys know where I sit. If you've got any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to help you out, okay? Literally months went by, and I didn't get any questions. And I thought, this is awesome. I just built this thing. It works great. It's intuitive. People know how to use it. People didn't ask me any questions because people weren't using it, right? And I realized this when the president of the company came into my office and he said, should we buy these assets? And I said, I don't know. Like, that's not in the model, right? And I had this realization at a Jimmy John's in Salt Lake City, where I didn't have my computer, I didn't have my database, I didn't have my data warehouse, right? All I had was a piece of paper, it was a napkin, right? And I realized that in BI, we typically get the cart before the horse. We typically say, where's your data? And once I have the data, what can I do with it? Instead of first coming to the person trying to use this data to answer questions and understanding what they need, right? So what I did is I grabbed the napkin and I wrote down my problem. I wrote down my question. And then on the back of that, I defined my way to success and said, okay, here's my question. Where does the data live that's going to help me answer this question, that's going to satisfy this question? And that's changed the way that I approach data from now on, right? Because again, at the end of the day, an effective visualization, I spent 9 months making crap. It was good stuff, but it was worthless because people weren't using it to make decisions. People weren't using it to solve problems, right? Effective visualizations are visualizations that lead to action, right? So that's what I did. I grabbed a napkin and I wrote down my problem. And this is one of the coolest, this isn't the problem that we had. at the company I was working at. But this is probably one of the coolest questions that I've seen in the last 2.5 years working at Domo. And so how much does it cost to make $1? How much does it cost to acquire and service $1 in revenue? Okay, really cool way to think about your business. And then on the other side of that napkin, on the other side of the piece of paper, you write the impacts of solving that question, solving that problem, right? This is before we're touching our computers, before we're looking at data, any of that. If we can't solve this problem on a piece of paper, then there's no technology out there that's going to help you out, right? So is this a good question or not? Okay. Is it a foundational indicator or return metric? I'm asking you guys. What? Return, right? Because we're talking about value, right? So what's the value of $1? Does it provide clarity? Well, we go through the impact. So if we answer this question, we solve this problem, we're going to be more effective with our marketing spend. We're going to know where to focus if I'm a sales leader. Depending on how I break this down, whether I break it down by industry, product line, salesperson, this is a good question, right? And then once I have this, it's important to keep in mind that you can't always answer questions that can't be answered, right? Just because it's a good question doesn't mean you can answer it. You need the data, right? So that's what you do on the back of the piece of paper. You map out how you're going to solve this question, what you need, what data you need in order to solve this question. You have to be able to take that red thread and connect all these different systems in order for you to get to the answer here. And finally, then finally you just visualize it, right? Like I said, I think if you've got a good why and a how, the what's going to take care of itself. Effective visualization is what, like I said, is lubricant for that person to make a good decision. Okay? But remember, when you're visualizing the data, though, this is not the time for you to channel your inner Van Gogh and make a masterpiece, right? You're not an artist, you're a storyteller. And Lee is probably are you gonna talk about storytelling? Maybe. I've seen her speak before, and she sometimes does that. So you're a storyteller. Don't think you have to answer a question with one visualization, right? Our VP of PR at Domo, this is her question. What's our return on PR, right? There's not one visualization that's going to answer this question for her. She looks at a series of 5, 6 different visualizations every day. As she's reading them as a whole, is going to answer this question, right? Don't think that you have to make one visualization to answer one question. Higher order questions can be broken down into simpler questions, right? And then, you have something like this. Okay, so this is a data visualization conference, and we haven't really talked about that. So I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to talk about my pet peeves when it comes to data visualization. Number one, everyone knows that pie charts suck. Pie charts suck. The human eye is a lot better with length and right angles versus area and volume and these obtuse angles, right? If I'm looking at the pie chart, I can't tell if I'm paying more on my mortgage or my bills. That's a very clear story when you look at the horizontal bar chart. Are we all in agreement with that? Okay, pie charts suck. If you've got more than like 3 elements, pie charts suck. Okay, number 2, geographic heat maps kind of suck too. They're oftentimes used incorrectly, and if they're not normalized for population, then they're just going to tell you where people live, right? So obviously, you know, we're going to have our site users and subscribers to Martha Stewart Living and consumers of furry pornography. They're all the same map, right? You got to normalize for population when you're using geographic heat maps. I'd say don't even use them because, I don't know, what do they really tell you anyway? So now what? This is a process, right? It's an iterative process. The visualizations that you create tomorrow and the visualizations that you create today should not be the same visualizations you create 6 months from now. If they are, then you need to tighten your feedback loop up with whatever you're creating for. Because oftentimes visualizations lead to better questions, right? And these better questions, at the end of the day, should lead to better visualizations. It's an iterative process. Okay? That's what I've seen with our customers at Domo. They treat their Domo instances, their dashboards, like an organic, evolving thing, right? Nothing is set in stone. Keep it simple. Don't let the medium detract from the message here, right? It's your job as a data visualizer not to be the star, right? Let the data be the star. All you are is just a conduit to help that person make a better decision, right? And at the end of the day, self-service BI, if you want to be really, really effective at your job, you should be figuring out ways that you can empower the business user to answer his or her own questions, right? Giving her the tools to filter, drill, to make basic charts and graphs themselves. You don't want to be a roadblock to them. You don't want to be a stumbling block to them. You don't want to be a bottleneck. You want to be empowering people to be better at their jobs. All right, that's what I had for you guys today. I can take some questions now. I have to run to the airport after this, so I'll give you my email address as well. It's dave.fryer@domo.com. It's F-R-Y-E-R. Or DAVFRY on Twitter. So, all right, what questions? Yeah, in the back there. Yeah, hold on, we got a mic coming for you.
Do you differentiate in between a question and a hypothesis?
Oh, what do you, okay, so that's a good question. Yeah, so what you're talking about is more like data discovery versus a business problem, right? Yeah, so they're totally different. But yeah, what we're talking about, this application is more for business problems that the companies are facing. But yeah, that's a good question. Other questions? Yeah, one right here.
Hi, thank you. One of my questions is, what do you do when your data doesn't tell the true story and the impact that you're having? Can you hear me?
No, okay, yeah, hit it one more time.
So my question is, what do you do when your data doesn't tell the true story of your impact? And my example is, so we have a marketing automation platform, Marketo, we have Salesforce, but our team struggles in converting the lead to an opportunity, so we lose tracking. And I know a lot of other marketers struggle with that. You have reps that will just create an orphan opportunity in Salesforce, so short of searching for that. And I think our biggest challenge is we meet with the heads of the business and show, here are all of our leads. We have this leaky funnel, but ultimately your Salesforce pipeline, you know that you're making more of an impact than what you do today.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Or
yeah, so that's more, if I understand it correctly, that's more of like a process issue, right? The data is there, but you don't have processes in place in your organization in order to tell the story effectively and 100% true, right? I think, start today, because data is like a bacteria, right? There's no such thing as totally clean data. Nobody's data is pristine, right? Everyone's data should be good enough, though, right? And in order to get to that point where it's good enough, like I said, data is like a bacteria. If you keep it boxed up, you have no idea what you have. You're never going to solve those problems. You're never going to get those processes in place, right? But it's when you air it out, get it in people's hands, and they're trying to use that data to make decisions. That's where you can identify the holes in your process or your systems, and then you can start patching it. But number one is you map it out, kind of identify where you think your holes are, still build it anyway, try and use it, and by doing that, you'll be better. You're going to better identify where the holes are. And if it's an important enough question, if it's an important enough problem that you're solving, then it'll take care of itself. Okay. So, but if it's not, if there's not a significant impact on the business for solving that problem, then that process is never going to be put in place. Good question.
I got a question from the internet streamers.
So should I be looking here?
Do you have suggestions on how to influence people and companies to think question first? I think people, even at senior levels, think data first many times.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like a cultural shift, right? How we think about our data. It's oftentimes it comes from the top down, but if you're the person building the visualizations for people, it's pushing back on them and saying, well, before I build this, I need to know if you're going to use it or not, right? And what are you going to do with it? Is this providing clarity? Or are you going to be able to take action from it? What are you trying to do for the business with this visualization or with this report that I'm making? All right. So it just takes, one person to change the culture of a company when it comes to data. I've seen it many times at Domo of creating this curiosity-based approach to data. It really just takes one person to push back and say, I'm not gonna make my TPS reports anymore, right? Because what do we do with them? And so I don't know, you just have to do it. It has to start somewhere. Yeah.
How do you tell a compelling story when you are forced to use last touch attribution? So it's really hard for us to really tell a compelling story to the organization about that end-to-end experience, because we've got multiple sources of truth, jacked up MacGyvered systems that don't talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And the only way we can measure marketing effectiveness is off of that same session last touch, and it's only part of the story. And sometimes when you look at that data versus the actual business performance data, they tell two different stories.
Yeah, so the question for those who didn't hear is, how do you tell an effective story when you're stuck reporting on a last touch attribution model? Do you have any other data? Do you have the historical data for? So help me understand, is that just because that's what people want to see is last touch, or is it because you don't have the data? You don't have the data? Okay, so here, I'm gonna flip back in here, maybe. No, okay, so when you identify your problem, right, and you have a significant impact on the business for solving that problem or that question, where what you need to do now is, turn that piece of paper over and say, all right, what are the historical campaigns that have affected this person to purchase? how am I going to report on that, right? So you need to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, all right, we can do this. We can report on a last touch attribution. What we want to see is all of their historical touch points as well. And how do I get those systems to, if I'm not capturing that data, how do we capture that data? What process do we need to put in place in order to capture that data? And then once we've captured it, how do I tell a story with it, right? So again, you've got a question. Now you need to ask yourself, where does the data live that's going to help me answer this question? And not knowing your industry or what you do or systems that you use, I can't tell you what that is, but you have a good question, right? And it has, answering that question could have very significant impact on how you're spending money going forward or how you're dealing with leads going forward. So it's a legitimate question. It's a good question. It's a return question. Now you need to figure out how you're going to answer it. And it might not be able to be answered right now in your company, but you have to put systems in place in order to answer it. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, I'm noticing the number one problem, I guess, for everybody is just basically communication in between their own industry. What success have you had with your clients in basically bringing in different departments together and working together that weren't working with in the past?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And it comes down to what level of the ring do you want to operate on, right? If you want to get into indicator and return metrics, there has to be collaboration throughout the organization, right? If you're dealing with indicator metrics, then sales can't just have blinders on looking at the CRM and to answer their questions, right? Marketing can't just be having their myopic view looking at their 7 different systems that they use to run marketing. They're going to have to look at sales. They're going to have to look at financial data as well. And there's going to have to be that collaboration across the organization to understand when we pull this lever, what do we get on the back end, right? So it's the maturity of your questions and maturity of kind of what rung you want to operate within in your company. But if you're asking, the better questions your questions are going to dictate what kind of collaboration you're going to have throughout your organization. Other questions? All right, I think we're good.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.